He saved marriages, counseled broken men, prayed over dying strangers. Thousands called him pastor, but his own son stopped calling him dad. And the worst part, he didn't even notice when it happened. Before we continue, where are you watching this video from? Drop your city and time in the comments. I actually want to know.
And if stories about faith, ambition, family, money, and purpose are your kind of stories, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Share this with someone who's succeeding publicly but struggling privately, because this story gets uncomfortable fast. Pastor Elijah Warren built one of the fastest growing churches in Dallas. 3 campuses, 40 employees, millions of online views. Men flew across states to hear him preach about biblical leadership. Ironically, his own house was starving for his presence. Dinner was supposed to start at 7. By 8:15, the food was cold. Jacob stared at the empty chair. His mother stopped pretending Elijah was coming home on time. And finally, the front door opened. Elijah rushed in holding a Bible in one hand and his phone in the other. Emergency counseling session. That was the explanation. Again, Jacob looked at him quietly, then asked, "So other people's families matter more than ours?" Elijah froze, but before he answered, his phone rang again, and he picked it up. The call was from Daniel Brooks, a millionaire entrepreneur from the church. His marriage was collapsing. He sat in Elijah's office crying like a child, saying the same sentence over and over. "I did all this for my family. I did all this for my family." Elijah leaned forward and told him, "Success means nothing if you lose your house." Daniel cried harder, and Elijah spent 2 hours teaching another man how to save his family. While his own was quietly dying at home, Elijah came home after 1 a.m. The house was silent. Then he saw Jacob asleep on the couch, still wearing his basketball uniform. A trophy rested against his chest. Second place. He had waited 3 hours to show his father. Then Elijah noticed a folded note beside the trophy. It said, "Mom says you're helping people. I wish one day you'd help us too." Elijah didn't know what to say, but his heart broke for his son. He knew that things were going south, but he thought to himself, "My family needs to understand. God called me to lead his flock. This is a sacrifice I have to make." The church exploded after that. More members, more influence, more invitations, more applause. But something darker was growing too. Jacob stopped talking during dinner. Sarah stopped asking Elijah to come home early. The silence became normal. And somehow, that hurt more than fighting. Her name was Vanessa Cole, 36 years old, recently divorced. She first came to Elijah for grief counseling after her marriage collapsed. At first, the conversations were normal: prayer, scripture, healing. But over time, the calls became more personal, longer, later at night, sometimes 2 a.m. And Elijah convinced himself it was ministry, not emotional attachment, because pastors rarely fall suddenly. They drift slowly, one justified decision at a time. Sarah noticed the change before anyone else did. The hidden phone screen, the late night smiling at messages, the emotional distance. One night, Elijah walked into the kitchen and found Sarah sitting silently in darkness. No television, no music, just silence. And she asked one question. "Do you still enjoy being home?" Elijah looked confused, but Sarah wasn't finished. "Because lately, it feels like we interrupt your real life." That sentence stayed in Elijah's head for days. Jacob changed too, but quietly. That was the dangerous part. He stopped asking Elijah to attend games, stopped waiting at dinner, stopped knocking on Elijah's office door. And one night, Sarah walked past Jacob's room and heard him talking to a friend online. "My dad loves the church more than us." She stopped walking, because deep down, she knew he believed it. A week later, Elijah preached one of the most powerful sermons of his life. The topic? Biblical fatherhood. The audience stood applauding. Men cried. Clips went viral online. Millions watched him say, "Your family should never compete with your purpose." And suddenly, while everyone else was inspired, Jacob quietly stood up and walked out of the church. Elijah saw him leave. but kept preaching anyway, because the crowd needed him. At least that's what he told himself. Then Daniel Brooks showed up unexpectedly. The millionaire businessman Elijah had counseled months earlier. Except now, Daniel looked different, calmer, present, but somehow more alive. Elijah noticed it immediately. "You look rested," he said. Daniel laughed softly. "For the first time in 15 years, I am." Elijah asked the question everyone else probably would have asked. "So did you sell the company?" Daniel shook his head. "No, I stepped back." That surprised Elijah. Daniel leaned forward. "I realized something dangerous. The business wasn't destroying my family. My lack of boundaries was." He explained how he stopped taking calls during dinner, removed himself from daily operations, trained leaders, turned off notifications after 7 p.m., started taking Fridays off for his wife and daughter. At first, the company suffered. Clients complained. Revenue dipped. His ego panicked. Then something unexpected happened, and his daughter started talking to him again. Daniel looked directly at Elijah. "You know the hardest part?" Elijah stayed quiet. Daniel continued. "I had built a life where everybody benefited from my sacrifice, except the people I claimed I was sacrificing for. And suddenly, the business stabilized. And at that moment, Elijah saw himself in terrifying clarity." Sarah got a phone call. Jacob had been in a car accident, minor injuries, nothing life-threatening. But Elijah nearly collapsed driving to the hospital. Because for the first time, he realized something horrifying. If Jacob had died, their last real conversation would have been an argument. Not love, not pride, not presence. An argument. Jacob looked exhausted lying in the hospital bed. Elijah sat beside him quietly, then finally whispered, "I failed you." Jacob looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering, "No, you abandoned us." That word destroyed him, because failure sounds accidental. Abandonment sounds intentional. And deep down, Elijah knew which one this was. The next morning, Elijah walked alone through the empty church auditorium. No music, no lights, no applause, just silence. And for the first time in years, he asked himself a question he had avoided. Did I build this for God? Or because I needed people to need me? That question terrified him, because he didn't know the answer anymore. The next Sunday, 10,000 people waited online for Pastor Elijah's sermon, but this time, there was no energy in his voice, no performance, no polished charisma, just exhaustion and honesty. Elijah stood silently for several seconds before finally speaking. "I have spent years teaching people how to protect their families, while quietly neglecting my own." The room became painfully still. Some people looked shocked, others already knew. Elijah continued, "I convinced myself I was serving God, when sometimes I was simply addicted to being needed." That sentence hit the room like thunder. Then he took a deep breath. "For the next season, I'm stepping back from weekly preaching and leadership responsibilities. Not permanently, not dramatically, but intentionally." He explained that other pastors would lead temporarily. Counseling boundaries would change. His schedule would change. His priorities would change. Because he finally understood something dangerous. You can do God's work publicly while failing your first ministry privately. Then Elijah looked toward the front row. Sarah was crying quietly. Jacob avoided eye contact. And for the first time in years, Elijah realized rebuilding trust would take more than one sermon. It would take presence, consistency, time. Here's the uncomfortable question. How many people slowly lose their families? Not because they stopped loving them, but because they convinced themselves providing, leading, or serving was enough. And at what point does purpose become an excuse for emotional absence? Because neglect rarely looks evil in the beginning. Sometimes it looks responsible. Sometimes it even looks godly. Until the people closest to you stop feeling loved by you. If this story made you think about your own life, comment your biggest takeaway below. And if you want more stories about faith, ambition, masculinity, purpose, marriage, money, and the hidden cost of success, Subscribe to Called and Conflicted, because some battles don't happen in public. They happen quietly, inside the people who look the strongest. See you in my next video. Bye for now.